Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about building and starting a business. We're talking about business licenses and building permits and the authorities and the departments that are interacting with each other to approve those. So where we left before the commercial break, the ugly word of appeal came up, which means, I guess, that if you're going to build something and you do your plans and you go in, there is a risk that somebody's going to say, well, no, you can't do that. And then you have to either change your plans or file an appeal. So what is that appeal process like? How does that start?
Well, one of the things that happens is our office will respond to the applicant and inform them that they either don't meet zoning ordinance.
Do you usually make that notification with armed security? Or
Yes, sometimes it can be emotional response. But yeah, they'll find something that maybe the structure is too close to the neighbor, or it's too tall, or something like that, or you know, some structure doesn't meet the code, and then again they may have failed in some area with health department or with fire, or those sorts of things. So what will happen, at least in the zoning ordinance part of that, is they have a right to file a request for a variance with the Board of Adjustment, the county's Board of Adjustment. They can file for a variance based on a very fixed set of 5 criteria that they use. The first criteria is that by enforcing the zoning ordinance, we're going to create an unreasonable hardship on the property owner. Secondly, that there's special circumstances on the property. For instance, you know, I have a big rock sticking out of my property and I can't put the house.
Frank Lloyd Wright would just build on top of it.
Build right over the top of it.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. He probably didn't need a variance to do that. And then, secondly, if we don't grant this variance, that the property owner will be denied a property right that the neighbors also enjoy. So it creates a situation where it's not equal. And then there's the issue of whether or not this variance substantially affects the general plan for the area that the Planning Commission has established. And then finally, that substantial justice is done, and that it's fair, that we've preserved the spirit of the zoning ordinance, and we've been just.
That gives you some parameters, but it also gives you some freedom.
Yes, yes, it does.
Is there an appeals process if the fire department gives a no? You know, Brad, is it hopeless for them, or can you find some middle ground?
No, it's not hopeless. In this valley, there are still a lot of lots that we consider flag lots, where access might be difficult. Access might be difficult for our engines because of the topography and the grade of the road. We can't waive requirements of the code, but the code does allow us to look at equivalencies. In other words, if I can't provide the access to the property that's required by the law, what other fire protection measures can I add that will be the equivalent in the protection of life and property?
So basically the guy's got to build a pumper into his garage permanently before he builds the house or something?
Not necessarily, no. When we talk about equivalencies, we're talking about fire sprinklers, the addition of that, or other type of fire protective measures in the construction of the building, compartmentalization, or rated walls and doors, those type of things. So we have a process whereby they can come into our office and fill out a code modification request, state what the difficulty is and what they propose that's equivalent to the life, safety, and protection.
How do they know to do that? Do they talk to you, or
yes.
Is that something that they go to a structural engineer on, or?
It depends. Sometimes they have to get the services of someone else, that a fire protection engineer perhaps, that can say, we can do this, it's a code modification, but it meets everything in life safety that the code requires.
So in essence, you may have to build like a bunker, concrete walls buried under the ground, the whole thing, but you can at least build there.
No, let me give you an example.
I know I'm taking it to extremes.
We've never said that quite, but
yeah.
Let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, that they can provide us with the access road, but they can't give us the 20-foot width that's required. So they propose that perhaps they'll fire sprinkler the home or the building. That's an equivalency because that buys us time. If we can't stretch the hose within 150 feet of the home and we have to go further, that's time. And so the fire sprinkler system would give us that extra time. That's an equivalency.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. What about the health department, Ron? I mean, if they say no, how do you fix it?
Well, with us, there's a few different ways. It depends. With building permits, a lot of times we see that with like septic systems, and we don't want septic systems obviously close to a river. And so we would work with them and a designer that they've hired to find a solution if possible. And so we work to do that. If they ultimately want to have a variance or be excluded from our regulation or don't feel that certain aspects of a regulation applies, then they can go to the Board of Health. And the Board of Health is ultimately our governing body. They're the ones that accept our regulations and that make them as we bring them forward to them. So.
Are there ever exemptions made? I mean, I almost think, you know, and that was very enlightening about fire, because I'm looking at that and say, okay, well, you can make a variance because you're a little closer to the property line, and you know, the guy's garage is a little tall, but you're going to cover it up with what you build, and you know. But when it comes to fire safety, health safety, it almost seems like that's a pretty hard line in the sand. So, are there appeals, or is that just something people should say, well, tough luck?
I think we work with them to try to help them with ideas to help to find that solution, and if they're willing to work and do that, then sometimes that does occur. Sometimes it doesn't. If they want to put a septic system 10 feet from a river, we know the contamination that occurs, and we would prevent that for health reasons. But we do have a variance process. We also have an appeals process if they feel like what's being done isn't correct. And so,
but for the most part, if somebody's got an unusual piece of property from the perspective of fire and health, there's always a way to re-engineer the beast and
yes,
to work out, hopefully to work that through.
Yeah. Technology has a big factor in that too, because the technology of septic systems and those sorts of things is changing
I remember
all the time.
GFI and now Spark right. And GFI, and it changes all the time.
Exactly.
The other thing that's helpful is to come and talk to each of us and understand what needs to be done, because sometimes when we get a business license or a building permit, and they say, oh, there's an issue with the health department. It's not an issue that's not able to be overcome. It's something that needs to be resolved, whether it's through a water system or through a sewer system or even with our regulations, and we'll work with them to find that out.
Excellent point. Stay with us. We'll be back. We'll wrap up our discussion here on the county seat.
There's no need to travel far to find that perfect family adventure. August 11th, there's the big demolition derby that wraps up our county fair. JUAB County. It'll change your family forever.
Rediscover your sense of adventure. Welcome to San Juan County. Discover the past. A change of place. Utah's San Juan County, where life is elevated.
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher in the Tushers, Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, Ghost Towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco kilns, horse racing, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?